Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Creating Enterprise Apps with AI and MCP. My name is Jason Beres. My email is jasonb@infragistics.com. And today we are going to talk about UI components. That's the main topic. What benefit do you get from UI components in today's AI world? How they compare to vibe coding? What Infragistics offers in terms of UI components? And really a lot of time in just demoing what we are doing. Throughout today's presentation, you'll see the website, you'll see links and demos to everything that we're going to do today. So there'll be no shortage of you being able to take this content and then do something hands-on with it in your own experience. So Infragistics has been around now for over 35 years, and our goal is to help you deliver amazing experiences on any platform. So for the modern web, we have Angular components, Blazor components, web components, and React components that help you build any type of experience. And of course, in today's market, as we're going to talk about in the presentation, there's all kinds of open source options available, and AI, you can vibe code a lot, but what we offer are those really rich higher end UI components that you would never want to vibe code and you would never want to build yourself to deliver those types of experiences. And even on the desktop, we have not abandoned the desktop at Infragistics. So while a lot of organizations have moved to modern web, desktop is still business critical across the globe. So think about WPF, Windows Forms. Now we're moving into WinUI, Maui, and other desktop platforms. Infragistics is right there for you if you're still building these types of applications, adding features to your existing applications, or just in maintenance mode and you want to get the latest builds because of regulation, compliance, etc. So a lot of the conversation that we hear today is, why would I use a UI framework? Why would I even standardize on React or Angular or Vue or whatever the next major framework's going to be? And this is what I want to spend a little bit of time on. So when you think about what Infragistics offers, and you'll see this in my demo, really rich UI components, the question is logically, well, wait a minute, I can go to my Claude Code, I can go to Codex, I can go to VS Code, and it'll just build stuff for me. The problem is that the tokens that you're using up in those sessions are really just the beginning. So if AI can make up that first 80% and everything seems easy, that last 20% is where you start to really cost. And it's not just in your time, your expense, but it's in the features that you're trying to deliver to your customers. So when we think about virtualization, accessibility, navigation, CRUD, that's where all of this real cost actually lives. Even something like theming, you want to offer different themes, and it's more than just the colors. You start getting into a lot of issues when you are going down that vibe coding path. So file size, one example is a custom grid, for example, can be anywhere from 2,500 to 5,000 lines of code, which means that every time you want to modify it, you're spending lots of tokens to maybe change one thing that you never wrote. You have no idea how to debug, and you're trying to add like a simple feature, and it may take multiple turns to get that right. All of the hallucination without grounding, and we talk about MCP servers and skills today, you will absolutely get hallucination. And it might look good in the beginning, but then you start running into those issues. And then, of course, I mentioned that long tail where that first 80% does seem pretty darn good, but then that last 20% can take you days, weeks, months. And I'm sure a lot of you are nodding your head right now because you've already been through this, and I might be preaching to the choir. So I've done so much vibe coding and I've ran so many experiments, and you look at just the number of iterations with your agents to try to build out really rich and complex user interfaces, it gets quite difficult. Even if you have a design system already set, it's the UI components, that underlying grounding, that really does save you not only the number of turns to try to iterate, and I know we've all experienced that prompt exhaustion, but then the token cost. So going from hundreds of thousands to millions of potential tokens to a component which might be 10 lines of code, but deliver what you would have taken millions of tokens to build yourself. So the token math is really that expense, but you could think of it as a rounding error in the overall cost during the lifetime of maintaining this component. And the costs that you're not counting, you are like this violinist, you're a solo act. Maintenance is perpetual and solo. So you have to bear all of this cost your own. No one is handling upgrades, regulations, new versions of frameworks. No one's handling the virtualization, the accessibility. No one's handling the optimized performance metrics. It's all going to be on you. And then when you want to build that next application, the cost is going to be quite high because probably what you built isn't componentized into a library and you have to redo it all over again. So there are a lot of hidden costs. So could it cost really $10,000 to $20,000 to vibe code a grid? Well, the numbers say it can cost a lot more. So when you think about just a data grid, and you're going to see some of the data grids that Infragistics ships today, and many of you know our products, we have dozens and dozens of features in our grids. If you want to build a grid bespoke for your application, it's probably a handful of features at best. There's really just one schema. You probably aren't thinking about theming. So low 5 figures to build that is absolutely plausible. And if it's just your simple vibe coded app, no big deal. A full featured enterprise grid, on the other hand, has 40, maybe even 50 features on a virtualization foundation. So performance is built in from the beginning. It's not an afterthought. And you look at some of the features like Excel style filtering, grouping, all of the nice menus and right clicks, exporting to Excel, A11Y, etc. This is really years of engineering investment to build those products where you just have maybe one or a handful of lines of code to get all of those capabilities inside of your application. So it's easily a 6-figure replacement cost. And the warning is that you always do feel initially that wow, I'm getting somewhere with this vibe coding. And I really think too, today, since there are so many good open source options out there, it even makes sense to start with an open source framework. Infragistics actually offers over 50 open source components, MIT licensed, in our Ignite UI product, including a grid that you should be using when you are coding, AI coding, vibe engineering, whatever you want to call it, because those components will ultimately save you cost downstream. So even when you think about our open source components, they're getting updated, they're getting maintenance, they're getting revved with new versions of Angular, of React, of Blazor. So you don't have to worry about that. But vibe coding is the future. And maybe it's not vibe coding in your vernacular. Maybe you call it enterprise engineer. I don't even know what. There's so many names for it out there today. But the idea is if I need to build a prototype really quickly, this is the way to go. But then prototypes oftentimes turn into the application. So start with a good foundation. Don't depend on LLMs to just make it for you. So whether you're starting with our Ignite UI enterprise component set or our WPF components or our WinUI components or our open source components, the foundation of what you're building should be based on a maintained UI component framework, as well as a framework like Angular, React, Vue, because those are going to be updated. So I don't want to sound like it's gloom and doom, because AI is really how we're all building applications today. The benefits that you get from settling on frameworks with components highly outweigh trying to let the LLMs vibe code things yourself. So what do you do? For common components, use open source. Use our 50 plus open source components. And then for complex UI, enterprise type UI, which is what we're going to look at today, use a commercial vendor. Obviously, we think we're the best one out there, and I'm going to show that to you in our demos. So with that, let's get into a demo. I am going to build out a typical looking financial services application. You might be in the manufacturing space, healthcare. The UI will probably look good to you, but the demo that I'm trying to show is about complexity and richness in the UI and where those UI components can really help. But before we do that, I want to take a look at the Infragistics website and walk you through some of the things that you can go try today that we offer in terms of our products. So here I am at infragistics.com. Our homepage sort of tells the story of the company. We have basically 3 areas that we focus on: design and development, embedded analytics, and work management. So we have our Infragistics Ultimate product, which is desktop UI components. It's modern web. We also have a low-code tool called App Builder, which I do want to show you today. Then we have an embedded analytics platform called Reveal. And then we have a growth GTM work management product called Slingshot. But the first thing that I want to do is jump over to Ignite UI. This is our modern web toolkit. We have all of the components that you would need to make up any type of really rich modern application. This is our data grid, and you can see that you've got some nice features here, different cell templates. The grid is updating in real time. You can see the different frameworks that we support. The way that we build our components is that every tool set has the same components and the same feature set, the same APIs. So if you want to choose Angular today and React tomorrow, don't worry, you're not going to lose any of the capabilities that Infragistics has to offer. So for example, if I jump over to our React product, what you'll see is first off, our AI assisted development workflow, which I am going to show you today. And then if we scroll down, you can see all of the different grid components, the different chart components, geospatial maps, layouts, gauges, data entry, like you name it. Much of these components are open source. So on our website, if you just go to igniteui.com, you'll see that there are badges like this little orange star. That's a premium component. Anything that doesn't have a badge is open source. So you can see that there are a lot of open source UI components. But what I want to do is I want to go to the React homepage here, and I just want to highlight some of the features that you can expect in our data grid. So this is standard ERP inventory type data grid. And you can see that I've got some hierarchical views here. So this is a hierarchical data grid. There's custom cell templates happening. There's Spark charts within the grid. But the interactivity that you get with a grid like this is really where a commercial grid comes in versus an open source grid. If I look at this org chart portal, again, this is a tree grid. So a little bit different display, but beautiful user interface, custom cell templates, custom interactions. It looks really good. If I look at the financial portfolio, this is something we saw on that homepage. So different components, different actions happening. We have some real-time updates happening, features like hiding and showing columns, pinning columns to the right or left, exporting to Excel, etc. So you do get that nice, well-rounded grid experience. This sales dashboard is a little bit different. This is actually a pivot grid. So you've got the ability to do different types of filters. You have different aggregate types across the grid. This is like your Excel pivot chart. So really cool. And this is just a component. You drop in, bind your data, and you get all of those capabilities. And then the fleet management I really like. And in fact, if I go full screen on this guy, we can see if I drill in, I have a tabbed UI here that's giving me more details about this particular row of data. So I'm getting some trip history, some maintenance history, details, and then cost and utilization. This is a template. So the grid supports templating for a master detail experience. You can have different types of components within the master detail, but really the bottom line is that you are trying to give your users an amazing experience without writing a ton of code using a beautiful component. So before we get into some of the coding, I want to jump over to App Builder, which is our low-code WYSIWYG design to code system. I'm going to go ahead and sign in. So I'm just going to go to appbuilder.dev. I'll go over to my sign in. Let's log in with my Microsoft account. I'm going to use my test account here. So that's Miriam, and we'll click next, sign in, and we get to the App Builder workbench. Basically, here's some updates on the latest release. And what you get when you log in is basically your existing projects, recent projects, if you have workspaces. But this is a low-code WYSIWYG. So what I can do is I can create an application with AI. We've got some different options here in the prompt gallery. We have some sample apps. We have some different templates. So you want to start with an empty template. This kind of goes through the most common templates. And if you have Figma, you can go right from Figma. But let's go to sample apps. I'm just going to go ahead and click try sample. And this is a CRM style application. Looks like a typical business app that you would use. So we're going to call this CRM demo. And that's going to be the name of our app. If I go over to the left-hand side, you'll see I have a toolbox of all my UI components. If I go to the different pages in this app, you'll see this is a single page application builder. So you can add pages, and then on those pages, you're adding components. as I select these components, you'll notice on the left-hand side here on the bottom, I've got the DOM layout. I also have on the right-hand side all of my properties. I can edit with AI, give prompts, etc. I can connect to different data sources. So we support any open API data source. You can have different routing, navigation parameters, theming, custom theming. You'll see if I just swap out the theme, the application changes, looks beautiful. You can add whatever theme you'd like. We have assets. And then if you want, you can just do an interactive chat and build with AI. But the reason I want to show this is because the whole world doesn't need to be AI. You can mix AI with low-code app builders. And instead of editing this page with AI, I just want to show you how easy it is to get started with a WYSIWYG tool like App Builder. So on my tasks here, I'm going to go over to the toolbox. I'm going to search for a grid, and I'm just going to grab a data grid. So this is going to bind to some default data. And here, if I make this actual size, what you'll see if I pan here, that I've got all of my columns. I've got the data that's bound from our mock data source. If I wanted to bind this to another data source, I could simply give it any one of the data sources that are already there or that I've added. I'm not going to go and add one in this demo because I just want to give you the idea of how this works. But for example, I've got employee sales data. I can grab sales and it rebound the grid to whatever columns were there. Not super impressive in terms of the number of columns, but that's the idea. I can just bind this to anything. So let's go ahead and change this back to my Northwind data. We've got orders. We'll just leave it at customers. That's fine. So here's my customer data. But what can I do with this? Well, I just want to see how it looks. I'm going to hit the run button. And there is my data grid. This is the actual running application. So this is live. This is not just something fake. It's actually the live application running with the interactions and the master detail and all of that good stuff. So you can see as I click around, the menus and the screens are changing. And here is that new grid that I just added. Now, what's cool about this is I can jump into code view, and there is the code that makes up this particular page. If I go to a more complex page, here is the code for that page. So there's no black box. This is all just production ready code. If I'm not doing Angular and I'm doing Blazor, like Blazor server, great. Here is the Blazor code for this same page. So everything here will generate the code of your platform of choice. But what else can I do with that particular page? So I'm going to go back to my grid and I want to add a few features. So I will just go down to its property editor. We'll add filtering, just start adding all of the capabilities and features here. We'll do grouping, hiding, moving, pinning, resizing. And the grid now has a bunch of new features. So if I run this again, you'll see that I've got the advanced filter dialog. I can export the grid to Excel. I will group by contact title. So all of this is legitimate, fully functional. You haven't written a single line of code. And what's even cooler is I can either publish this to GitHub or download a zip file of this project. So I'm going to use trial package. I'm going to maybe change it to React, and I'm going to publish this over to GitHub. So here we'll give this a nice name. We'll call it CRM demo 1, and I'm going to make it public so you all can see it. I don't want to do an existing repo, but these are all of the repos that I can add this to. So any one of these I could do that, but I'm just going to do a new repo. I'm going to create this repository. And at the same time, we could also deploy this app to GitHub pages. So it's like running automatically, but I'm just going to click publish. And what this is doing is it's actually taking this schema and all this information, running it through our code generation engine, and it publishes over to GitHub. Here's my entire GitHub application. If I copy this now and I will go and minimize this guy, let's go to our Visual Studio Code. I'll do a Command-Shift-P, we'll git clone from GitHub. Whoops. Yes, Beres, Command-Shift-P, git clone, paste my repo, I'll just stick this over here into repos. We'll open this guy up, and here is my code. So I've got my app and I've got all of the pages. And if I do a new terminal, we can do an npm install and an npm start, and we'll see that kick off. And basically what you're going to see is this is identical to what you saw in App Builder. I could have done this in Angular. I could have done it in Blazor. I could have done it in anything. Now, what can I do next? I could actually work with my agent and modify it, continue to bind it maybe to a back end, a different back end. It's completely up to you. But my point is that it is not always about starting from an AI chat. You could still use tools like WYSIWYG low code tools like this. You can see, let's go to our tasks page. This is our tasks page. We have our pager here on the bottom. I have all of those features. I probably should have had the default page to be like a little bit bigger, but let's do our grouping by contact title. Let's go ahead, export this guy to Excel. We open this up and you can see there is my grouped data all exported to Excel. Everything works perfectly and I didn't write any code. And so if you are building out a real rich enterprise application, it doesn't hurt to start in a tool like App Builder because you'll save millions of tokens just getting screens organized and set up. And then when you export these to code or synchronize them with GitHub, you can take it to the next level. So now let's see what we can do with just Ignite UI. So our Ignite UI components, like we saw earlier, they have many features and many capabilities. So what I want to do is I want to close this guy out. We're not going to continue to work with this particular sample. I'm going to close this folder and let's open a folder. I have a VS Live folder that I created on my C drive. There's VS Live. Let's select this folder. And what I want to do now is actually create a new app with the Infragistics Ignite UI CLI. So when I go back to the docs here, just so you know where to find everything, look at the agent workflow. We have a CLI that helps you automate all of the setup and stuff to get the skills in, the MCP servers, theming. We have a maker framework. So it's all here step by step in the guide. In fact, we can literally just kind of copy and paste. So I'm going to copy that npm install. I'm going to paste this right here. And now it's going to install the Ignite UI CLI. And this is how I can get started building out applications. So now that that's installed, I can simply type IG, and this is going to start a prompt to build out my project. I'm going to call this blotter-demo and hit enter. I want to use React. However, you can use any framework that you'd like. Let's do an empty project. And now this is where it's cool. It's going to add in all of the skills and the MDs and the agents MDs that I need to use my Claude Code, my Codex, whatever I happen to be using. So I'm going to use Claude Code because that is my favorite. And I'm going to use the mcp.json. I'm just going to hit enter here. And then I'm going to complete and run. I could add a component and do whatever else, but I just want to have a basic application. And if I drill into my blotter demo, you'll see that it did all of this goodness here and it's installing those packages. Now, one thing, and there we go, there's our default blotter demo here for React. So I'm going to minimize this. We'll go back here. I'll just leave it running. I guess it doesn't really matter. One of the things about the agents is that each tool and each agent needs the MCP in a different location. So for example, this mcp.json went into the blotter demo. So if I go here over to Claude and I type in MCP servers, you're going to see all of my Claude AI MCP servers. You didn't see any Ignite UI ones. Sometimes you have to restart Claude to actually see if your MCP server is alive. I'll do it again. Nothing there. Why is that? My MCP is stuck in my app. It needs to be in the workspace that I started. So I'm going to move this into my VS Live folder. Now let's restart a Claude session, do a /MCP, and we're going to see Ignite UI CLI and Ignite UI theming are ready to go. So what are we going to build? I want to build something that's really rich, has some grids, has a really rich layout, like a DockManager Visual Studio type layout, sort of probably like Visual Studio Code, but it allows pinning and dragging and dropping. And so I've created a prompt here. And my prompt is going to tell Claude to build a dark FinTech trader workstation. I want a watch list. I want some charting. I want market data. I want conditional formatting. I want theming. I want all kinds of features. And remember, when it comes to prompting, it is measure twice and cut once. So this is a fairly compact prompt. I didn't go too crazy, but if I gave it even less information, I may still get the same outcome, but I do want to tell it a little bit more of like what I expect in this enterprise app. So I'm going to copy this. We're going to go back here and I'm going to say in the blotter demo app, and I'm just going to paste the rest. What is it about? Build in the blotter demo app, build a dark FinTech, blah, blah, blah. And what it's going to do is it's going to use the MCP server, so the Ignite UI CLI, the Ignite UI theming. And when we go into the Claude folder, into the skills, you're going to see some other skills that exist. I have the Ignite UI React components with all of the skill definition. So how are we saving you tokens? Well, we're saving you tokens because you're not building out some enterprise grid with 1,000 features, but we also have everything here local, so the agent knows what to do. So the MCP server is going to give some value in terms of finding things, looking up things in docs, looking online for samples, but all of the markdown files here within my skills are going to really have the instructions to build out this application, when to use the MCP server, when not. And of course, the CLI plus the theming together is going to give me this amazing experience. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit run. And now we start going through that process of building out the application. So while that's running, I want to jump back over to our website. I want to go back to the infragistics.com website, and I want to go back to design and development. And I just want to highlight under Ignite UI, you're going to see all of these frameworks. And what do those frameworks give you? The same thing across the board. So if you need a specific feature and you built a React application and now, you're swapping frameworks to web components to be framework agnostic, all of the components across the board are going to be the same. The CLI is going to be the same, and the theming is going to be the same. So you don't have to worry about missing out on feature sets if you're moving between frameworks with the Infragistics UI components. Another thing I want to highlight is our sample application. So here you can see inspiration is everywhere, and it really is. We have a ton of really cool sample applications. All of them are fully downloadable. So for example, if you're a Blazor dev and you want to check out like the US elections dashboard, we've got the full code. You can download the sample. You can launch the sample to play with it. If I want to do something for WPF, for example, great. Here is a dashboard with auto sales, geospatial maps, charts, etc., all interactive, full source code available for you. So always look at the sample applications, and that's going to be underneath Learn and Support, reference apps, and you can get everything you need here to be inspired maybe on what your next application will look like. So let's go ahead and check on our agent again. This will take a few minutes to run. So you can see that it's done a bunch of research, looked at the typings, looked at the skills, and now it's built out its list of what it actually wants to generate. So in the source folder here, we're going to start seeing the different components that it's going to make, and we'll start seeing updates here as it works through how it's going to build out this application from its planning stage. Now we have our trader folder that it created. So it's doing some state management. It's got the theme manager. If I expand on this, what you're going to see is that the Ignite UI product ships with some default themes. So we have light and dark variants of Bootstrap, Material, Fluent, and Indigo. So I want this application to actually have a theme swapper. And we also have, it's SaaS based. So we have variables. So one of the variables is large, medium, small. And so that can change how much space is between grid rows or how tall grid rows are, all the spacing in your components. So all of that now is getting generated. And when we think about vibe coding, usually you're just whatever Tailwind allows. You might have a light theme, a dark theme, and there's a ton of CSS that goes with it. So with something like a framework like Ignite UI, either our open source components or commercial components, all of this is going to be the same across the board. And now it's added the panes folder. So we're going to start seeing the different panes that we want. So for example, the watch list, and you'll notice here, we're adding the IGR grid. What do I want? Row selection, filtering. I have a grouping expression. I'm adding the field names. And then within those columns, there's some different properties. So you can see that the little templates are being built. Top movers, same thing. So we're just seeing that instead of building out a vibe grid, we're just using the IGR grid. We set some properties, we give it the columns, and then we're good to go. So we'll see this continue to build out the individual panes that we're going to see in our DockManager component, which is really what a lot of the sophisticated desktop trading apps use, or any high-end application where there's a lot of windows. You want to give customization to allow people to move things around. It looks like it's added the trader workstation. So we've got our theme provider, and it's just going to start building out the different dock panes that it's created over here under pane. So we've got all of our dock panes built, and these could be very easily just reusable components that I could pop in anywhere, full screen or within my layout. This is importing the dock manager, and the way the dock manager works is you have collections of panes and slots, and then within those, you are just simply adding whatever components you've built. So it's a very flexible layout engine, and you can see the content ID that it's pumping in, but almost no code to add all of this really rich layout, which we'll see as soon as this is done building. Looks like it's wrapping up its builds. You can see that we have done a server restart. And actually, we can go over to the browser and see if we have anything pop in here. And look at that. Here is our desktop trader application. So what do we have? And it might be still finishing up. So if we go back here, you can see it's still doing a couple things. So we might see some interactions happening. But you'll notice here, as I select items in my grid, I've got a tree grid or a grouped grid. It's actually grouped by sector. So I can see the different sectors and the data for those sectors. You can see that the data is updating in real time inside of the grid. So it actually looks really nice. This is a dock manager. So the whole idea, whoops, here we go on a refresh, is that we have dockable panes. So these dockable panes can be moved and dragged anywhere you want. So if you think about Visual Studio Code, or it's more like Visual Studio. Visual Studio has a real docked UX where you can move and drag items all over the place. So here I've got my watch list. I've got my configuration because remember, I wanted to have that theme switcher between the different themes. So I've got some nice themes here. Let's go back and we'll do material light. And that's like very bright. Let's do medium. We can do large. We like small, bootstrap. Looks like the small, medium, large isn't wired up yet. Let's go back to dark. And this is dark fluent. If I go back to my chart, there's going to be interactivity between the grid, the chart, the level 2 grid here on the bottom, the time series on the bottom. And of course, we've got our other grid here on the bottom, which is also showing us some other information. And this, again, full feature grid. I have all of the the grouping, the column pinning. So here I can pin columns to the left or right if I want. I can collapse any of the grouping that's going on. I can make this full screen if I want to look at it a little bit more. So I want to have a bigger view of it here. This will go back to normal. And so the idea here is a really rich component set, and then using MCP servers, AI, and frameworks, you can not only deliver super rich experiences like this beautiful WYSIWYG DockManager experience, which is really just amazing. So we can just kind of build this however we want. We have all of the interactivity. We have all of the grid features. We have the real-time streaming and updating. And all of this was done with the MCP server and the skills. And it did it in way less time with way less tokens than you ever would have had just vibe coding this. So even a rich layout like the DockManager, this is all of the code required for that. All of those other capabilities are actually built in. And you can see it's actually still doing some stuff here. It's actually cool. It's running Playwright. And so it's doing some visual verification on the actual application. So it's testing it, which of course, if you've ever tried to use Playwright and run your own tests, that can get a little dicey, but it's done with all of the to-dos. It generated the entire application. If I go here to my Git changes, why don't we just generate a nice message for this? I'll go ahead and commit this. We'll publish this branch. I'm going to make it public. It's going to be called Blotter Demo on my public repository. And whoops, that did publish. Let's open this guy up on GitHub. So go to Beres Blotter Demo, and you can just clone this and see exactly what happened throughout this whole process. So there is no smoke and mirrors. Go ahead and see it for yourself. But this is a really beautiful application that has all kinds of capabilities. We'll just do a quick refresh on it. And whoops, localhost 3009. Did I kill something here? Let's go back to Visual Studio Code. Actually, I don't even know what port this is running on. Let's go ahead. And this was called, I think, Blotter Demo. Let's go to Blotter Demo. Whoops, CD, Blotter Demo. We'll do an npm start and we'll run that at localhost 3003. So there's our application again. Looks good. We have all of our themes. If you go look at your positions and then the config will have the different theme options. Ignite UI ships with Material, Bootstrap, Fluent, Indigo in both light and dark. So you have your theme of choice. Material always does look pretty nice. It has a nice contrast, but if you want like a more compact look, I think Fluent's always good as well. So you can get that look and feel. And I love our ticker across the top. So that's actually ticking all of the data that we have in our blotter here. So this is actually pretty slick. I'm pretty amazed. To build this would have easily taken like weeks. And then they have all the data, have all the real-time updating, all of the components. That's pretty slick. So with that, let's go back to the slides. We'll answer some questions and we'll wrap this up. So to wrap up, I think you probably want to start building with Infragistics today after you saw that demo. You can build amazing experience with not only app builder. So let's say you want to start with a very structured app. You've got everything all set. Maybe you have some Figma that you actually want to just generate and get code out of or get screens out of. Use our MCP server with skills and just Visual Studio Code, Cursor, whatever. Windsurf with Ignite UI. I don't want to discount the desktop WinUI, WPF Windows Forms, but just go to igniteui.com, appbuilder.dev, or just infragistics.com, and you can start today, get all the links to everything. So try all of these today. Stop trying to vibe code your enterprise components. Use frameworks. Use UI libraries like Ignite UI, like everything that we have in Infragistics Ultimate to help you deliver these beautiful experiences. So we do have some questions I'm going to answer. They've been popping up and we've been trying to answer throughout, but jasonb@infragistics.com is my email. Please email me if you have any questions. And some of the questions were around just getting started. How do I acquire the product? So let me go back here. I'm going to minimize this and I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code. I'm going to Control C this, and you could go to our website and you could obviously go and there's like download links and all this other stuff, but getting started is really easy. So if I go here and I'm going to do open folder, so I'm going to go back to my C drive. I had my dev folder and I had VS Live, and I'm going to create a new folder here. and I'm just going to call this getting started. And that's it. So I want to open the getting started folder, and I just want to start building an Ignite UI app. So let's open the terminal, and I'm a command line guy. So I'm not using, the other guys. I'm using the command line to start from scratch. You don't need to do anything but this. I'm going to npm install Ignite UI CLI. And you could do it globally or not. I keep installing this globally, so it's just updating. This will install the latest Ignite UI CLI to get going. Now I'm done. Now what do I want to do? Just type in IG and give it a name of a product or project. We'll do demo. We can do Angular, empty project, default. And now I get my prompts for how do I want my AI to work. Let's do Copilot and Claude. Let's do VS Code and complete and run, or it could add a component, add a scenario, so you can start building just through the CLI and choose this. Would you like to upgrade? Skip. No, I'm going to use the trial versions. 4200 is fine. That's all you need to do. Now I have the Infragistics components, the base components in my application. So if we go to source, I go to app, we're starting to build out an app. If I go to package.json and I make this a little bit bigger, you're going to see that it's installing the Angular dependencies, Ignite UI for Angular. So all of that now is going to be installed, and I'm ready to go. And remember, based on how you installed the workspace or how you saved your workspace in Visual Studio, you might need to take that mcp.json, and move it to the root. So what I did earlier is I just moved this to the root. Yes, I want to move it. Now, when I click it, if I'm just using VS Code, I get the little run button here. So I'm just going to start this and start this. And if I'm using code, it actually now sees that those are running. If I'm using Claude Code, just click a new instance and that MCP list will be there. So you'll see these guys, but I'm ready to rock and roll. I can now just say, hey, add a new Ignite UI grid with all of these features in a CRM app and make it CRUD and make it connect to this back end. You are ready to rock and roll. So getting started is super easy. There was another question in the list about open source. Yes, just go over to whatever your flavor is. So if I go to Angular and I'm here at the Angular homepage, get started for free, make sure you read the AI workflows, but you'll see open source versus premium. And this is the list of open source components. So everything in this left column that has a green checkbox are all of the MIT open source components. So it's basically everything but some of the charts, grids, DockManagers, and things like that. So you are good to go. Pricing, yes, you can find out about pricing right on the website. It's about $1,000 for all of the Ignite UI components. And that's a subscription. You get all the updates, the latest frameworks, all that good stuff. So you never have to worry about it again. And once you have the grid, it's using schematics to upgrade it. And obviously now with an agent, it'll upgrade it automatically. So it ends up being super easy. And with that, I think we are out of time, but I really appreciate everyone's time today. Remember, my email is jasonb@infragistics.com. And I want to thank all the folks that set this up. I want to thank our product team for building a great product. And I really want to thank you for attending. I know you have a lot of choices on how to spend your time, and we appreciate you joining us today. So thank you very much and have a great rest of the day.